Hello. I didn't know you were watching again. I'm sorry. I was jamming out again. I'm sorry. It must be a small earthquake. My lights are moving. Anyways, we have a live studio audience tonight. Go ahead and make your way. We'll let you make your way faster. There we go. Alright. Welcome to Confessions from Lost Souls. This is episode 7. Tonight, we're kind of done telling everybody's stories, kind of. You know, you learned about Barry, Megan, Gabriel, Ashley, Catherine, and you learned the mother's storyline last week. So this one is kind of, we're going to slow it down. The elders are back in town, or should I say in town. So yeah, we're just kind of dealing with the aftermath of last week's church blow up. Yeah, they blew up a church. Exciting. Anyway, so we're going to get into that episode. Mostly this is kind of a funeral episode. We're going to go into, because you know, Michael died in the last episode. So we are going to go into that a little bit. But anyways, let's get this shit on the roll. Ball, whatever. Everybody grab your glasses of wine. I'm already 4 glasses ahead of everybody else. Tastes good too, Moscato. It's on sale right now at Walgreens. Anyways, let's get into this. The door to Victoria's mansion closes behind Adeline. We're picking up right where last week's episode left off, by the way. Adeline interrupts the silence and says, "You all look exhausted. Why don't you all get some rest, and we will be meeting with the elders' evaluation team tomorrow. Here. So good night, everybody." That was fast. Adeline opens the door and walks out of the house and shuts the door behind her. Victoria looks at Barry and says, "Who alerted the elders?" Barry looks at Megan and says, "Wasn't us." Victoria walks into the living room and says, "Well, someone did. Someone in this house is working against us." Gabriel pulls Michael up to Renee's house. Renee opens the door and welcomes the both of them in. Renee, with her accent, says, I forgot what accent she was. Hold on. Please, boys. Sit down. I just pulled some blueberry muffins from the oven. Gabriel says, Mother, there is something that Michael and I need to tell you. Gabriel's mother walks into the dining room, sits down at the table with the muffins, and lights up a cigarette. And says, So what have you come to tell me that I don't already know? Michael looks at Renee and says, I have decided to ask for your son's hand in marriage. Renee blows out cigarette smoke and says, It's not even legal in the state of Nebraska. Why would you boys ever do such a thing? Gabriel looks at his mother and says, We are in love, Mother. And we are driving to Iowa to get married in 6 months from now. This is not funny. We have already set the date, and we would really appreciate it if you were there. Renee looks at Gabriel and smiles and says, All right, you have my blessing. You guys better give me a grandchild soon then before my time comes. They all start laughing. Gabriel says, Don't push it. The laughter all three of them had, happy, plagued Gabriel's mind into complete insanity. Gabriel is standing in a room full of coffins, and a preacher standing next to a black coffin. Gabriel snaps out of it and says, That one. He was fond of old antiques, so he will like this one. He follows the preacher down the hallway and into the funeral parlor area. Gabe begins hearing Michael's voice in his head, mixed with the baby's laughter, mixed with Michael's expression on his face as he died. Whatever Gabe does, he can't get it out of his mind. Gabe walks out to his car and sits in his driver's seat. Gabe stares out the windshield and then turns his head to the passenger seat. There, sitting there, is Michael. Michael looks at Gabriel and says, I love you. Gabe begins bawling and puts his hands on his face and buries his sorrow in his palms. Jude, Victoria, Barry, and Megan are sitting on a couch facing another couch with Adeline and 2 others. One of them was another middle-aged woman named Phoebe, and the other was a younger man named Terrence. Terrence was in his early 20s. Barry is giving the eyes to Terrence, and Victoria is eyeing Adeline. Phoebe stares at Jude and says, As you are aware, in the last 2 weeks we have had 2 members of your coven, Victoria, turn up dead. One was burnt at the stake and her heart was taken out, and the other was a powerful voodoo queen, also burnt to death in her own backyard. Now, do you want to tell me what is going on here? Victoria says, That is what we're trying to find out. All we know is that Ashley from my son's coven had the same demon in her that her mother Kristen had in her. Adeline interrupts and says, Yes, and we never did find Kristen's body after that horrible witch hunter accident in 1993. Victoria says, I know. We were all just as curious as you, my sister. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn to the audience. Adeline says, And Barry, your coven has a missing witch that will supposedly corroborate your mother's story. Where is Ashley? Barry looks at Megan and says, We don't know. She attacked us in the church, and the next thing we knew, the church completely collapsed to the ground. We were lucky to get out alive, Victoria interrupts. Adeline stares back at Barry and says, "And what about the psychic that police found dead in the woods? He was completely burned, and you and Megan saw him at your mother's birthday party. Where I'm not mistaken, but your mother turned 50, inheriting 50 years of Salem's magic." Barry and Megan look at Victoria, and Victoria stares off to the side. Barry says, we had no idea about the last part there. And I just saw that psychic that one time. I had never seen him again and hadn't heard about it until Alex asked me about it once over dinner. Jude, Victoria, and Megan look at Barry in a what the fuck face. Terrence interrupts and looks at Barry and says, "Interesting. I would love to hear more about this Alex character. Who is he?" Barry looks at Terrence and says, "Alex is Catherine's fiancé. He's a detective with the Edgewater Police Department. Catherine is part of her coven, but we found out that she was working with Ashley." Terrence opened his eyes wider and says, "But what is he to you?" I lost my place. Barry looks to the ground and says, "We've been seeing each other behind Kat's back." "This is complete nonsense," interrupts Adeline. "And this Alex character is irrelevant to why we are here." Victoria looks at her and says, "And why are you here, Adeline? Why now?" Adeline stands up and walks towards the fireplace. Adeline says, "We know that Kristin was dead, but we just didn't know where until now. We know that Ashley, Catherine, and a third individual used a ritual on Renee and brought Kristin back to life. We know that there are witch hunters involved because Megan is carrying the blessed ones. But what we don't know are the details in between. How did we get here? What is going on privately between the two covens that this has happened? And what can we do to stop it? In the meantime, we're going to make a visit to Catherine and see what she has to say about this situation." Megan's phone vibrates in her pocket, and she pulls out her iPhone and looks at the message. The message is from Gabriel, and he asks Megan if she would grab her mother and Barry and meet him at the funeral home. Megan texts back real quick and says, "Okay." And we'll be right back. Kat's apartment. Adeline, Phoebe, and Terrence knock on Kat's door. After 3 knocks, Adeline waves her hand and unlocks the door. They walk into a very quiet apartment. Phoebe says, "I smell evil in here." Adeline says, "So do I." "Catherine? Are you home, dear?" "It's the elders." They all 3 walk around the room, and Alex comes out of the bedroom. Alex says, Can I help you 3 with something? You know you are breaking and entering." Adeline says, "Young man, we are looking for Catherine." Alex walks into the kitchen and says, "Yeah, and so am I. Ever since she saved me at the church, I haven't seen her." Phoebe walks into the kitchen and says, "Are you Alex, by any chance?" Alex turns his head and says with a charmed smile on his face, that damn Thor look, "Why, yes I am, ma'am." Terrence comes to the bar. Terrence comes to the bar, you know, like when they have separated the kitchen. Terrence walks up to the bar and says, "Yes, we have a few questions concerning your relationship with not only Ashley, but another person by the name of Barry." Alex's smile nearly derails when Adeline interrupts and says, "Terrence and Phoebe, we are looking for Ashley and Catherine. Standing here talking about their sex lives isn't going to help." Alex says, "Well, if you all need anything, you know where to find me." The three of them walk out of the apartment. Catherine, who was in the hallway listening to the conversation, runs down the hallway. The three of the elders walk out of Alex's apartment and close the door behind them. Terrence looks at Adeline and Phoebe and says, "You know the ring that he was wearing on his right hand? That wasn't an engagement ring. That was a symbol of the witch hunters. I think we may be onto something here." Terrence and Phoebe walk past Adeline, and Adeline stares with rage as they walk down the hallway. At Kristins' house, Catherine runs up the stairs to Kristins' house. I guess you're already there. Which was Ashley's before, because you know Ashley's dead now, and Kristins her mother, if you're not paying attention. Catherine runs into the living room of the house, and Kristin is standing in front of the fireplace. Kristin says, "You're staying with me. We need to stand together to bring the covens down and the elders. We already have Ashley, Renee, and Lucy. All we need is the two others from the bloodline to complete the ritual that we started 36 years ago." Megan, Jude, and Barry pull into the funeral home parking lot, get out of the car, and start walking toward the funeral home. Excuse me. That was just a natural human attraction. They walk inside the funeral home, and Gabriel is standing next to the wall. Megan walks up behind him and says, "What was so important that just us three had to meet you here?" Gabriel looks at her and says, "You and your mother are going to bring Michael back." Jude pushes Megan aside and says, "Gabriel, something like this can't be done. He's been dead for too long." Gabriel says, "Well, then you should have brought him back in the church when it happened." Megan looks at him and says, "Gabriel, don't even go there." Gabriel looks at them and then looks at Barry and starts crying. Gabe says, "Please, will you just try?" Megan looks at Jude, and they follow Gabriel into the back room where the bodies are held. Megan looks at Jude and says, "I've never done this before." Jude looks at her and says, "It's a lot harder than it looks. Here, take my hand." Gabe leads them over to Michael's casket. Michael is laying peacefully in the casket with his knife wound on his neck sewed shut. Jude and Megan stand in front of Michael's lifeless body. Jude turns and looks at Barry and says, "We may need you for this." Jude says, "Barry, place your hands on top of Michael's head. Megan, place your hands here on his stomach." Jude places her hands on Michael's heart and closes her eyes. Jude says, "Focus on bringing him back. Fill his lungs with air. Focus." A moment pauses, and they all let out a deep breath. Jude looks at Gabriel and says, "I'm sorry. There's nothing to bring him back, honey. He's gone." Gabriel walks out of the room slowly with his head down. Jude looks at Barry and Megan and says, "Come on. There's nothing more that we can do here. Let's go get ready." Adeline is sitting in her hotel. Bleh. Adeline is sitting in her hotel room, going through some papers, when she hears a knock on her door. Adeline walks to the door and opens it. Alex is standing in the doorway. Alex says, "Next time, can I get a heads up if you're coming over?" Alex walks past her and Adeline says, "Come right in. And I didn't know you were going to be home." Alex turns around and says, "And what the hell was with the questions about Barry and I? I hardly know the guy." Adeline walks towards him and says, "I know you've been fucking around with Victoria's son. You should be ashamed of yourself. I put you into the coven with Catherine to keep an eye, not fall in love with a faggot witch." Alex glares at her and says, "How dare you? I have put my life on the line for you and taken out dozens of witches just because you told me to. I can't have a little fun now and then? What the fuck?" Adeline lights a cigarette and says, "No. You can't have a little fun, you fucking moron. You're supposed to be marrying to the voodoo queen's daughter. Now we have to escalate things." Alex looks at her and says, "What do you mean?" Adeline blows out smoke and says, "Not only do I want Victoria burned at the stake, but I want Megan, Gabriel, Barry, and Catherine's heads. We have to clean up this fucking mess that you and the covens left. You're going to go meet Catherine tonight, and you will kill her. I want her dead." Alex says, "How am I supposed to do that? She is staying with Kristen." Adam looks at him and slaps him. Ow. Why didn't you tell us that?" Adeline says. Alex says, "Because I just fucking found out today." Adeline stares at him and says, "Go there now. And I want her taken care of or I'll kill Barry myself in front of you." Alex says, "Fine, Mother." Alex is getting ready to walk out and says, "Oh, and you do know that Barry is your cousin, right?" Alex stops and turns his head. "What?" Adeline looks at him and says, "You are such a disappointment. Now go run along, you little cousin fucker." Alex storms out and slams the door behind him. It's fucked up. We'll be right back. The audience won't shut up. Welcome back. Let's see, we got our own commentary. Cue laugh. Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. Welcome back, though, seriously.
No, seriously.
Shh.
You can always redo it. So yeah.
Silencio, por favor.
Action.
Okay. Megan is down in the basement doing some laundry. She shuts one of the laundry doors and grabs the basket and starts folding her clothes. She begins hearing voices. She looks to her right, up at the ceiling, and there is a vent. She puts down the last piece of laundry and walks over to the vent. She hears a faint male voice through the vent talking over the phone. Megan grabs a stool and stands on top of it and puts her head to the vent. Right above her in the room, above her, is Tom standing in their dining room talking on the phone. Megan hears Tom say, "Kat, you don't understand. Ashley is dead now. We have to rethink what is going to happen here." Megan can't hear Kat's voice on the other end at all. Megan pushes her head closer to the vent. Tom says, "Megan doesn't know anything, and we are going to keep it that way, for the babies at least, and then I will kill her once the unholy ones are born." Megan all of a sudden lost her balance and falls against the wall on the bookshelf, knocking it over in the process. Megan hears footsteps from above her begin walking towards the basement door. All of a sudden, Martha, the previous dead house owner, is standing above Megan. Megan catches her breath and Martha says, "Look what you did! You made him mad! He's coming for you!" And disappears. I lost my place. Megan begins to freak out and panic as Tom begins walking down the basement steps. Megan stands up and says, "I'm fine, I just fell." Tom rushes over to Megan and says, "Are you sure? Those babies have taken a lot lately." And Megan says, "Yeah, I basically fell on my ass." All of a sudden, Tom's eyes go black and he says, "Bitch, I told you to stay off of your feet." Megan turns her head to him and says, "What the fuck, Tom? That wasn't very nice." Tom grabs her right arm and says, "Don't you fucking talk back to me, woman. I will fucking knock you out." Megan begins pulling and squirming and says, "Tom, this isn't funny. It fucking hurts." Tom says, "Shut your mouth." Tom slaps Megan across the face and she falls towards the wall. Megan screams, "Ah!" Tom grabs her back up and punches her right in the gut of the babies. Ow. Megan begins grabbing her stomach and she begins to black out from the pain. Tom punches Megan in the face and she falls to the ground. Outside you hear Tom lay 2 more punches onto Megan. A casket carrying Michael is placed in front of a small group wearing black. Gabriel is standing in front of the crowd of the Black Sea of people. You know what I'm talking about. We see Gabriel throw some dirt on top of the casket. They begin to lower the casket into the ground. Terrence walks over to Barry and stands by him. Victoria and Jude stare at the casket being lowered. Terrence asks Barry, "Where's Megan at?" Barry looks around and says, "I don't know. She wouldn't have missed this for anything. I don't see Tom either. Maybe I'll swing by the house on the way home." Terrence grabs Barry's face and looks him in the eyes and says, "And I can stay with you tonight?" Barry smiles and says, "Yeah, that is fine. But I want to stop by Megan's first." Barry walks up to Gabriel, who is standing by the now newly buried remains of what is now left of his husband, Michael. Barry hugs Gabe and says, "If you need anything, do not hesitate, okay? I love you." Gabe shakes his head yes and starts crying. Barry and Terrence walk off. The sun begins to fade into the land, and night begins to fall. Barry and Terrence pull up to Megan and Tom's house, and all the lights are out. Barry says, "They must be sleeping. I won't bother." Barry and Terrence drive off down the street. All of a sudden, Tom snaps out of it and looks down towards a beaten and bruised Megan. Tom begins crying and bends down towards her and holds her in her arms. Tom cries, "Oh my God! What have I done? Megan!" Megan's body remains still as she is unconscious because he beat her so hard. Victoria is standing in the living room of her mansion, staring into the fireplace with a glass of whiskey in her hand. I prefer wine, but I'm all out. Yep, I'm all out. It begins to rain outside, and the wind picks up. You are shown Alex walking up to Kristins' house, and he stops and stands in the rain. He pulls out a dagger and starts up the stairs to take out Catherine. Barry and Terrence walk into Barry's apartment, and their clothes are completely soaked. Let's get soaking wet. Anyways, Barry walks into the living room and turns on the fireplace. Poof. Barry comes back up, and Terrence grabs him, and they begin kissing passionately. Terrence takes off Barry's wet shirt and throws it to the floor. Barry pulls off Terrence's shirt, revealing his glistening, tight, wet skin. Excuse me. They continue kissing passionately with their hands rubbing all over each other's bodies. They move into the bedroom. This is getting hot. Barry and Terrence lose the rest of their clothes, and Barry begins passionately thrusting himself into Terrence. As they begin to climax, they both begin glowing white. Gabriel is laying next to Michael's headstone crying. The rain begins to come down even harder, and the now fresh dirt is turned to mud. All of a sudden, Michael's hand punches out of the mud and reaches into the dark night sky. Gabriel screams, and all of a sudden, his eyes turn white, and lightning strikes Michael's zombie-like hand. That's it. That's the end of this week's episode. Anyways, we're going on hiatus for a couple weeks, so there won't be a new episode till December. I have no idea what's going on in the next episode. One second, let me check. I'm a little drunk. But that does not encourage drinking, children. Let's see here. What's going to happen in the next episode? Ooh. 2 weeks from now, the dead speak. So, we will be back for that episode. And that one's titled, Conversations with Dead People. So, yeah. And we're kind of going to get in the story of how Terrence and Barry know each other. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of hot sex scene for cable TV. Not, this is YouTube. Anyways, my audience is distracting me right now, and I gotta go. So, that is it for this week's episode, number 7. And I will see you hopefully in 2 weeks, if I remember. Alright. Deuces. Oh, no, wait. No. Hold on. Deuces. There we go. Alright, bye. Get out of here. Go. Stop.